County Board meeting to order. If the clerk will call the roll, please.
Weibel,
Where are my
Alex?
glasses? Oh, good. I have them.
Anderson, Bergson, Carter, Cowart, Esri,
Here.
Harper, Harrison, Harkey,
Here.
Jay,
Here.
Maxwell,
Here.
McGuire, Michaels, Mitchell, Quisenberry,
Here.
Rector, Rosales, Schrader, Schwartz, Shore, Petrie.
Present. Since there were no volunteers that stepped forward to do the February reading, you have me. And so I'm reading something to you from Christopher Alexander, who is considered one of the greater thinkers in urban planning. But in practice, master plans fail because they create totalitarian order, not organic order. They are too rigid. They cannot easily adapt to the natural and unpredictable changes that inevitably arise in the life of a community. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the clerk please read the notice of the meeting?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on February 18th, 2016 at 6:30 p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county, for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees, and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda and addendum. Mr. Mitchell. Second, please. Ms. Cowart. Any changes or adjustments to the either document? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Thank you very much. Unanimous vote. All right, I'm going to read into the record the date and time of our next regular meetings. First, our standing committees. Facilities will be meeting on the 1st of March at 6:30 p.m. in the Shields Room. And please note, because there's a primary election in March and the Shields Room is used at that time, there's a slight adjustment to our schedule. In other words, we are starting the first Tuesday, not the first Tuesday after the first Monday in the month of March. So again, it begins with the 1st of March. The Environment and Land Use Committee will be meeting on the 3rd of March at 6:30, again in Shields, and the Highway and Transportation on the 4th of March at 9 a.m. over at the Highway Building. The Committee of the Whole will be meeting on the 8th of March, 6:30 in the Shields Room, and to the County Board. And I'm going to ask Mr. Quisenberry to comment on A and B under the County Board. Yeah, the changes for the study session and the reception.
Yes.
Okay.
You should give me a heads up. I would be
I'm
better
sorry.
prepared. Sorry. Yes, next week we are doing something very important, which is interviewing 3 potential candidates for the county administrator. And I have made the request that because I want our county board members focused on that process, I made the request that this county board study session be postponed till March so that we could focus on the very important job of identifying a candidate to bring on and follow in Ms. Busey's footsteps. And I will point out that, actually, while I have the microphone on, there is item B that Patsy was referring to, is the reception for these candidates, which is a meeting open to the public. We hope all of our stakeholders out in the public come out to meet these 3 candidates. They will be here in this room from 6:30 to 8:30 and available for anybody who comes to chat with them, get to know them a little bit in an informal way. We will have at that meeting evaluation forms so that members of the public who come and meet with those individuals could give us feedback on them. This, of course, is for the board members. This is after I've got a sign-up sheet here for board members to get time with each of the candidates. We have 15-minute blocks. We can have up to 2 county board members in each 15-minute block. They run from 2 o'clock till 4:30, I guess 4:45 p.m. on that same Wednesday. So you can either by yourself or with one of your teammates on the board get a few minutes, 15 minutes time with each of the candidates so you can get to know them. You will also have an opportunity to fill out an evaluation form, which is a little bit more detailed than the one we will have at the public session. So if you have not had a chance to sign up for this yet, it's going to be passed around this evening, and we're going to try to get as many people to come out and talk to these candidates as we can, because we want to make a good choice. We want everybody's input.
Yes, but I want to add to the change of the study session in February. It's been moved to the 29th of March. If you'll mark your calendars. The topic is not changing. It's just the congestion of activities. And when we chose February for the facility study session, we were not aware that we would be also interviewing the candidates the same week, and it just seemed to be awfully dense for all the county board members. Now, the last item that I want to put in the record is the regular county board meeting will be St. Patrick's Day, 17th of March, usual time, 6:30 here in the Shields room. All right. Now, public comment time. I have 2 slips for this evening. First slip is Mr. Cope. Yes, right there. Yes, and be sure to press the mic so everybody has the pleasure of your comments.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Bill Cope, and I live at 4018 North Lincoln Avenue. I'm one of 3 landowners who are having their land taken for the alignment of Lincoln Avenue, about 17 acres of land for a very short stretch of road. And we've been part of a negotiation process with the City of Urbana and the county, with Jeff Blue, who's here. And only yesterday did I realise that it was on the agenda today that our land was to be up for eminent domain. We've been trying to negotiate this, and we've done it in good faith. I'll just give you a rough sense of the dimensions of it. The nearest sale to our land, which was literally only 200 yards away from where all our land is, was in June 2013 for $52,000 an acre. The initial offer of the county for my land was $18,000 an acre, which is less than I paid 10 years for it, and it's the best part of my land because a lot of my land is floodplain. So that was clearly not acceptable. Then the current offer is $35,000 an acre, which is less than the school, but considerably less than this nearest sale, which has exactly the same services and exactly the same zoning possibilities. Now, we've been trying to negotiate this, and we've come down and come down and come down. We're now more than $10,000 less than the nearest sale. And we feel as if, and we discovered just by accident yesterday that this eminent domain thing was happening. We put in an offer a week ago of $42,500, which is $10,000 less than the nearest sale. So what we've been wanting to avoid is we haven't got an appraiser, right? We haven't got a lawyer. We've been wanting to avoid that because it's expensive and it's painful. And the offer that we put in for 42,500, we didn't get a reply to, right? So if it's going to go to eminent domain before we've even had a reply, that doesn't seem really fair from our point of view. So the other two owners were not able to be here this evening. They're out of town on holidays. They asked me to come and do it. I would have rather not do it, but they asked me to do it, so I came to do it. Now, what I do know is that it is your responsibility, everybody's responsibility here, to pay the absolute minimum amount, because your responsibility is to look after the taxpayers of Champaign County. So, I mean, I appreciate that and I understand that. So, in a sense, I'm not asking, it's not right for me to ask for you to give us more money. I'm just asking that it doesn't go to eminent domain and that we have an ability to negotiate. And as I say, our current figure is $10,000 less than a sale 200 yards away on North Lincoln Avenue, this sale, with exactly the same services. So that's really all I have to say. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Cope. The next speaker is Mr. Bindon. And I think he knows our rules because he heard them at the organizational meeting of the Racial Justice Task Force. So thank you for joining us this evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Samuel Bindum. I live at 1606 Kingston Drive in Urbana. I am also the facilitator for the Racial Justice Task Force. And we had our first meeting not too long ago. And there were some concerns that were brought up in the meeting regarding support for the task force. It is my understanding that there were no actual funds allocated for the task force. However, there were some unintended consequences to that, being that there were a large part of the conversation was that there weren't microphones. Another part of the conversation was that there was no thought into providing administrative support in terms of a clerk or anything, because many of the participants are volunteers. As reports are being done, printing costs, things like that, just wondering how is it that the task force is charged to do what they're supposed to do or able to do that without any administrative support. So I'm sent to ask for administrative support.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments? All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment for this evening. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda. Mr. Rosales and Mr. Ezri, a second. Any items that you want pulled from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Roll call. You think? I'm just speeding things along so fast tonight.
Weibel? Yes. Alex? Yes. Bergson? Yes. Cowart? Yes. Ezri?
Yes.
Harper? Yes. Harrison? Yes. Hartke? Yes. Jay? Yes. Maxwell? Yes. McGuire? Yes. Mitchell? Aye. Quisenberry?
Yes.
Rector? Yes. Rosales? Yes. Schrader? Sorry, Schwartz? Yes. Shore? Yes. Petrie?
Yes.
Skipped Anderson.
He's here. Anderson?
Are you on board, Mr. Anderson? Yes. Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, communications from board members. Are there any? Yes, Ms. Bergson.
The Mental Health Board will be starting its search for a director in March. They've taken a slightly different turn, and so they'll be doing it in March.
Okay, that's good to know. Did you have a comment, Mr. Alex?
I did. I just wanted to thank Mr. Bynum and the members of the Racial Justice Task Force who did show up for the initial meeting. There were clearly some confusion over scheduling and microphones and some administrative details like that, which I would like to assure the county board we are attempting to work out with the help of the county administrator and the county board chair. So I know there have been some emails about that circulating, and there's been discussions about changing some schedules to try to be able to make sure that the task force has the room it needs and the resources that it needs to conduct a meeting. So that is being worked on, and I hope to have some better news to report on that soon. So thank you, sir, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. Alex. And just to underline, all that information has been conveyed through emails from Kay Rhodes to all the members of the Racial Justice Task Force. Sorry there were bumps in the road during the organizational meeting, but I think they're going to be smoothed out. The last thing I'll pass around, Mr. Shore and several other county board members have been I have attended the Leadership Academy, so if you have any questions about it, you can direct them to him after the meeting, but here are sign-up sheets in case people are interested, just to move that along and get others to take advantage of that. It's offered right here in town. You don't have to go very far to attend the various sessions. Any other communications? All right, seeing none, a motion to approve the minutes for the 21st and 28th of January, please.
So moved.
Mr. Quisenberry, second by Mr. Shore. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Unanimous, very good. This evening, we have the presentation on the ADA compliance requirement from our friends at Bailey Edwards. The Facilities Committee had been given a preliminary report which did not include the 2 jail facilities. So even though you all on the Facilities Committee have heard it, there is going to be additional information for this evening. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you guys too. My name is Carla Smalley with Bailey Edward. I'm here to do an abbreviated presentation of the report we gave to the Facility Committee here a couple weeks ago, last week. So I'm going to run through just really the highlights, and if you guys have any questions, please just jump in. So again, briefly what we're going to talk about tonight, I'll show you some of the ADA language. I'll share with you our background and approach, some sample items that we tackled as far as access issues, and a summary of where we're at as far as costs go with those access issues, with correcting those access issues, and a brief plan of attack on how we're going to package those access issues into projects. In case you're not familiar, I'm just going to run through some of the abbreviations I'll be using in the presentation. Americans with Disabilities Act is ADA. The DOJ is the Department of Justice. OPCC is the Opinion of Probable Construction Cost. IAC is Illinois Accessibility Code. And the 2010 ADA Standards for Accessible Design is really what we use as a standard to design by. It gives us spatial relationships. So a little bit of background on the scope of the settlement. It included all of Champaign County-owned facilities, and it also included programs located in leased facilities, for example, the Head Start program. It also encompasses all site access to county-owned locations such as parks or sidewalks, those kind of items, and all of the polling places were looked at as well. as a side note, the Head Start programs are located in Champaign, Rantoul, Savoy, and Urbana, and we estimate the cost to correct their access items at about $70,000. Now, all the numbers that I'm going to show you tonight are estimated and rounded. So it's because we haven't done any design, they're not exact. So the contract between the DOJ and Champaign County was signed on July 20th of 2015. It gave 3 deadlines, one October 20th of last year, one January 20th of this year, and one March 20th of 2018. Bailey Edward and the county have already submitted our reports for the last 2 deadlines to DOJ. And many of those access issues were corrected by the facility or by facility services and his staff, by Dana's staff. The primary access issues that are identified for the March 20th deadline include a lot of parking lot and access to buildings. So I'm not saying this very well. We have to correct a lot of slope issues to comply with ADA in our parking lots and in our approaches to the buildings. So they're going to be a little bit more difficult than what the facility staff can address. Here, very briefly, is a sample of the report that we sent to the DOJ. All the items in green are the items that the facility staff have corrected. Our notes are on there about what the corrections were and a photograph of the corrected access issue. The report spans probably about 50 pages. The items that are in white are the items that we were not able to correct or are not due until the 20th of March. And they also have a cost associated with them. That's why they don't have a picture next to them as well. This is an example of what we presented to the Facilities Board last week about identifying what items still remain in each facility. As you can see, this is Brookins, again, just an example of some of the items. The floor plan indicates where the restrooms are non-compliant and what we need to do with them. And then we've also identified the site and the ADA access from the parking to the front of the building, and some wayfinding signage. So here's a summary of each one of the reports that we've submitted. The October 20th report, all the modifications were done by the Champaign facility staff. The approximate cost was $9,700, and the approximate labor hours were 58 hours. And examples of these items that were corrected were door closers. The pressure on the door closer was corrected. We adjusted grab bars in restrooms, installed mirrors, and installed ADA signage at our parking areas. The January 20th deadline also was done primarily by the Champaign facilities staff. The cost was $6,100. Approximate labor hours was 120, and again, it was, move signage for rooms and put it at the correct height. Some restroom modifications, reseal and restripe some parking lot, and install some additional ADA signage. The March 20th, 2018 deadline, all of these modifications are planned to be designed and bid. Primarily, these include modifying routes from parking, like I said, from parking to the front of the building to comply with ADA. There are ramps in the courtrooms that need to be modified. There's larger restroom renovations that have to be done. And then the courthouse holding cells need to be modified as well. And we have estimated this cost between $534,000 and $605,000. Again, that's estimated and rounded numbers. These costs do not include the Sheriff's Office, Correctional Center, Adult Detention Center, Head Start facilities, or the polling places. So I understand you're going to be considering the Sheriff's Office, the Correctional Center, and Adult Detention Center as a separate issue. So that's why we've broken those numbers out. So the Sheriff's Office, we have estimated at right around $100,000. And these numbers also include some design contingencies and bid contingencies. So we have a little cushion there. Primarily at the Sheriff's Office, we are again, modifying slopes along the path of travel from the parking to the front of the building, modifying restrooms to comply with ADA, and they're specifically providing drinking fountains. The Correctional Center, which is just below the Sheriff's Office, we've identified at $64,800, and primarily there it's, again, ADA access to the parking areas and an ADA compliant holding cell. The Adult Detention Center is estimated at $52,900 and has really the same compliance issues. Route from parking to the building, restrooms, and compliant holding cell. Am I going too fast? Not fast enough? Okay. Sorry. So our plan of attack is really to divide the projects into two groups. We're going to bid one of them this spring and do the work over the summer and have the construction completed by fall of 2016. Then group two will follow right behind it and be bid next spring, work in the summer, completion in fall of 2017. That way we have all of our work done by fall of 2017. We can gather our report and submit in March of 2018. This also allows you to divide up some of the costs over 2 years, so you're not getting hit with costs in one year. And it seemed reasonable. We haven't broke up the project specifically which year will be done, but we will get to that, and it will make sense. We'll do like all the parking as one, and you know, it will make sense as we break them up. That's really it. Questions?
Okay, just a minute. I'd like to invite Mr. Brenner to join her in case you have some things to share on this project. It falls under your domain, so the two of you can share the microphone. Thank you. Mr. Weibel, I saw your hand.
Yes, thank you. Inasmuch as the state of Illinois, from a money viewpoint, is on shaky ground, and we certainly don't know how that's going to impact us. And say it could impact us, and say in a year and a half from now we decide we don't have any money to pay all these projects, can we petition to have the deadline extended?
Maybe Ms. Busey is better at answering that question.
That would be a negotiation of the settlement agreement with DOJ. Currently, the settlement agreement does not allow for that, but I mean, we would have to we have agreed that this is what will be done in this 32-month period of time.
Is that assuming that our finances will remain as?
No, this is what we've agreed will be done because we are out of compliance and DOJ expects us to be in compliance.
Okay, all right.
Okay, Mr. Alex.
I'd like to go to the last page where we talk about the sheriff's office, and I assume the correctional center is the downtown jail and the adult detention center is the satellite jail. These numbers have recently been developed, right? So this is the first time these numbers have come to the board, right? These are significantly lower than I think what a number of board members, including myself, were expecting to see. Is this a case of, is this because the scope of the changes that we have to make are less than we thought, or were we just assuming the worst? And more importantly, do we feel that these numbers are realistic? I mean, just for people who don't have this in front of them, I mean, it's talking about $100,000 for the sheriff's office, which is a pretty large facility. Correctional center, the downtown jail, $64,800 for a, large facility that's, as far as I'm concerned, quite inaccessible right now. And for the adult detention center, $52,900. I mean, I would not have been surprised to see these figures be substantially higher. I'm just wondering if you can speak to how we came up with these numbers.
Sure. Okay. We went through every one of the DOJ's comments and what they've identified as access issues. Now, this is not all-inclusive. I mean, we haven't gone through the facility and with the intent of making the entire facility accessible. We only addressed DOJ's comments.
So does that suggest that DOJ, for example, is not saying, every cell in the jail has to be ADA compliant?
Well, they wanted, I believe they have, it's 3% or at least one. So if you only have, obviously, 3, then they want at least one cell that is
Okay, so the concerns,
accessible.
I mean, some of the concerns that were expressed early on in this process were with the fact that most of the downtown jail is a 2-tier facility where you have cells located up, both up on a balcony, a catwalk essentially, and on the main level. So that's essentially, they're saying that's not an issue as long as there are enough cells for that are accessible. And so this is that's not an issue for staff. My understanding was that a lot of these issues were not only accessibility for the public, or in this case for inmates, but for employees and county staff. But it sounds like that's not considered an issue.
I don't believe that DOJ considered that. It wasn't on their access issues. So.
Okay, that's surprisingly reasonable. Thank you.
Was that an editorial comment? All right. Other questions? Mr. Maxwell.
I think I heard you say that some design issues and things were included in your estimation. Does that include the architect fees and things like that?
Yes, sir.
So this is an all-inclusive
It
estimate?
is an all-inclusive number, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions, since you have both of these knowledgeable people in front of you? Oh, Jim McGuire, please.
So I guess, what is the total cost and where's the money come from? That's a better question.
Well, the total number of the Sheriff's Office, Correctional Center, Adult Detention Center, and all of your other facilities is right about $825,000. Just rough numbers. Where the money comes from?
Ms. Busey, would you like to answer that question?
Well, over $50,000 was spent in 2015. There's currently $175,000 budgeted in 2016. Clearly, based on these estimates, that number is going to have to go up somewhat. But these are still estimates, so it's possible that we would have to double that to $350 for this year and $250 for next year. But we do have some of the money already appropriated.
All right, other questions? Well, you did such an excellent job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time this evening. Next, I see Mr. Gima in the last row there. Good evening, Mr. Gima. You're here to catch us up about the nursing home. And Mary Hodson, thank you for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. Before I get into my regular quarterly update, I have Mary Hodson here to my left, who is on our board of directors, but is here to talk to you about the nursing home auxiliary.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, members of the county board. As Scott mentioned, I'm presently serving on the advisory committee for the nursing home. I believe my term is up at the end of November, but I also am the president of the nursing home auxiliary. And it has really been beneficial to us to have a member of our auxiliary serve on the advisory board. We very much appreciate that, and I also appreciate your giving me a few minutes this evening to share with you our latest initiative. Our auxiliary has been helping residents at Champaign County Nursing Home for 50 years. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. And we generally participate in and help with activities involving the residents and sometimes their family members, ranging anything from staffing a small snack shop in which the residents can come in and purchase little snacks that wouldn't normally be on their menus, to running a Thursday morning sing-along with the residents. Other activities include labeling resident clothing for new residents who come to the nursing home, and participating in a wide variety of scheduled activities there. We also have fundraising efforts, and through our fundraising efforts over the years, we have purchased a variety of little extras to make the lives of the residents more enjoyable. We have purchased a patio furniture for our courtyards, flowers for the courtyards, equipment for our beauty shop and for our dental clinic, bingo prizes, games, outings, etc. And we're very excited that we have recently collaborated with the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois. You may be aware that the Community Foundation already handles a fund for the nursing home called the Joyce Ettinson Memorial Fund for Nursing Education. And in the future, they will also be handling our auxiliary donations. And they will continue, though, to grant these donations to be used for the betterment of the residents at the nursing home under the directions and directives of the auxiliary. The auxiliary had two long-term concerns that we provided for in our agreement with the Community Foundation. The first thing that we were concerned about is that, like many auxiliaries, we are getting smaller and older. Believe it or not, thank you. And so we are concerned that maybe someday there would not be enough auxiliary members to sustain the auxiliary. So if you have friends that enjoy volunteering with elderly people, please refer them our way. But should the auxiliary at any point in the future cease to exist, the foundation that we have set up, or the endowment that we have set up with the Community Foundation, will continue to exist, and on a grant basis will continue to be able to direct funds back to help the residents at the Champaign County Nursing Home. Our second long-term concern was that there might be a day that the nursing home would not be owned by the citizens of Champaign County. And if that were ever to happen, then any donations, whether they be memorial donations or other donations that were made to a tax-deductible 501(c), could no longer be used for a for-profit nursing home. So we were concerned about that, and we provided for that in our agreement with the Community Foundation. Should the nursing home at any point be sold, then the fund is directed to continue to use the donations for the needy elderly residents of Champaign County. Now, some of you have already indicated to me that you might like to make a donation. So I passed out our news release that gives the website of the Community Foundation. It's www.cfeci.org. You just go to the website, you click on Donate, and then you select the Champaign County Nursing Home Endowment Fund as your recipient of choice. Mr. Anderson also asked me if we could still make donations by check, and you can. You simply make your check out to the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois, and then in the memo section you put Nursing Home Auxiliary. You can leave it with the volunteer coordinator at the nursing home. Her name is Ellen Schweitzer, or you can mail it to the Community Foundation, whichever you prefer. So we invite your participation on any level. If you'd like to be a member of our auxiliary, if you would like to make your life's end directives to include memorials be directed to the Champaign County Nursing Home Auxiliary, we'd appreciate that. Or if you'd just like to join in an activity, I would especially like to invite you to our Thursday morning sing-alongs. If you came once, I think you'd be hooked. If you look out into a room of residents who appear to be totally disabled and completely incapable of participating in activities, and then you notice that maybe they're singing along with some song they remember from their youth. Or you look out and you see veterans and you're singing the Star-Spangled Banner or some other patriotic song, and you look out and you see them with their hand over their heart and they're singing, and maybe even tears are coming to their eyes. Believe me, it is one of the most gratifying things that I have done in my retirement. I often say that we volunteers get more out of it than the residents do. So you don't have to make it a permanent commitment, but if you would ever like to see what we do and just join in, feel free to drop in on a Thursday morning at 10 a.m. And regardless, we would be happy to accept your donations. Thank you for your time.
Mary, thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mary. All right. Oops, sorry. I didn't want to go that fast. All right, what you see there is our census through December. And you can see that we have been in the 170s over the last few months. And I can tell you the census in January will probably end up at about 174.3. And our census as of today is 174. We actually were up to 177, but we had 3 discharges over the weekend. But the good news is we have 3 pending admissions. Our average daily census for the calendar year of 2015 turned out to be 186.1. And you can see that's pretty close, right at where we were back in 2009, and obviously we're well below last year's record census of 202.1. This chart shows our admissions and our discharges and through the facility, and you can see that our admissions have been increasing in the latter part of 2015. So in October, we had 21 admissions. We dropped to 12 in November, but we were back up to 19 in December. And in the month of January, we also had approximately 19 admissions. And basically, the main thing that has been keeping our census down, because our admissions actually have been up in October, December, and January, is the number of residents that we are sending home. And that continues to be a continuing trend over the last few months. What I can tell you is so far, before I talk about this chart, is that in the month of February through today, which is the 18th, we already have 13 admissions. So we've been averaging, in 2015, our average admissions per month was just under 8.5. And so the admissions that we've definitely been seeing an uptick since October. We'll take November out for whatever reason. But so far this month, February has been a very strong month with 36 referrals. so far this month. And we've been averaging anywhere between 40 to 45 referrals per month. Again, averaging about 8.5 admissions, but we already have 13 so far this month. And our Medicare census has gotten as high as 19, which is the highest level that we've seen probably since 2014. So, and right now I can tell you that we have, that includes right now about 10 Medicare Part A or Medicare Advantage, 2 VA, and 1 Medicaid that have been admitted so far this month. So, knock on wood, hopefully this is a continuing trend, but this has been a very strong month for admissions. Our payer mix that you can see, and that's our monthly payer mix for the calendar year. And you can see that the Medicaid, and this again is without any of the Medicaid conversion days, so this gives you a better picture of the mix of residents that are actually in the building. So the month of December, we had 58.8% Medicaid, and we've been averaging right about 55% Medicaid. And again, that's a good mix of Medicaid for us to have. Private pay is at 32, roughly about 32 to 34% through the year. Medicare has been roughly about 6.5%, and our VA actually has been fairly strong in the last couple of months, or actually with December and January. So we actually hit at one point in January 5 VA skilled residents. So we are starting to see more VA referrals, and we're also starting to see a higher number of referrals for VA and private pay in our adult daycare program. So I think I've previously mentioned that prior to 2015, we've been averaging 10 to 12 in our adult daycare. Last year, we were closer to 15. There have been days in the latter part of 2015 and early 2016 where we've actually hit 20 or more in our adult daycare program. Now, some of that is also because of the state budget cuts, because the only other adult daycare program is a standalone facility. And because of the budget issues in Springfield, they're having cash flow issues. And so they've had to reduce their hours and reduce their staff. So they've had to stop their Saturday hours, and we've actually seen more referrals because of the limited hours or the reduced hours at the other adult care daycare center. But our mix, so right now we've been averaging about 15 on average, and our mix is approximately 10 private pay or VA and about 4 or 5 Medicaid. So again, we are also not being paid for the Medicaid adult daycare residents. And so since July 1st, that total amount that's owed to us by the state has probably exceeded $30,000 by now. But the good part of the program is that we have a pretty strong mix of private pay and VA over the last few months that's helping our cash flow from adult daycare. So for the year, now also keep in mind that with a census of 186.1, we are able to manage a positive cash flow from operations for the year. So we're looking at about $751,000. And again, this chart shows our cash, accounts receivables, and accounts payable. And you can see our cash in December ended at $368,000. Basically, we're playing catch up at the end of the year to get our payables. We owe the county for IMRF and some of our taxes. And our cash balance right now is roughly about the same level. You can see our accounts receivable has been creeping up over the last few months, and we're at basically $4.9 million. And the creep is basically some of that because this is our receivable balance at the end of December. We had some timing issues where our Medicaid payments, which are continuing to be paid on a monthly basis, but we did not receive our December payment, which typically comes in about the 3rd or 4th week. We actually got it in the 1st week of January. So that's roughly about $200,000 that we weren't paid in December. But in addition to that, we also had a timing issue with our Medicare payment, which was about $120,000. But we're also starting to see, I'm jumping forward here just a little bit because I had this out of sequence. Bear with me. Because I'm jumping to our friends with Health Alliance in Molina with our dual eligible managed care program. Health Alliance, who is no longer participating in the managed care program, still owes us $100,000. So we just received about $98,000 last week. And so again, we have scattered claims that are November or older, and we're owed about $50,000 for the month of December that hasn't been paid yet. So basically with Health Alliance, we just have to keep pestering them, and they usually get us paid. Molina, because Health Alliance is now out of the MMI managed care program, we had been averaging about $50,000 per month in Molina billings. In January, because we've had a number of residents that transferred from Health Alliance to Molina, they now count for about $80,000 in monthly cash flow. So right now, we are owed about $140,000. That is December and older claims, and we're just finishing up our January billings, and that's another $80,000. And I'm pointing these two out because I call this the low-hanging fruit. I mean, these are pretty much clean claims that as long as those two payers pay us on a timely basis, we really don't have any issues with. And when I mention or describe these as clean claims, meaning that when we bill them, we're pretty much 99.9% sure that we're billing each of these claims properly, which means that once they get it, they should return or give payment to us within 30 days. So in terms of cash flow, this is probably our number one area to make sure that we are on top of Health Alliance and Molina to get these claims paid to us in a timely fashion. Oops, I'm sorry, hitting the wrong button here.
So where's the rest of the $4 million receivables? If Medicaid is paying on time and you have 200 and something thousand there, where's the rest of it?
The majority of it, again, we're talking a creep of about, $450,000. So again, it was a timing with the Medicaid and the Medicare payments that weren't received in the last 2 weeks of December. We received those at the beginning of January. So I anticipate that our receivables will look better in January. Because I believe that we received our Medicaid, our Medicare payments in a timely fashion. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, our January payment is going to be received tomorrow, I believe. So again, there's a little bit, I'm not going to call it a payment delay with Medicaid, but they're a week later or two than they have been.
Okay, so let me ask you differently. So on average, how old are your accounts receivable? Because you have about $4 to $5 million, so how old are they?
I couldn't give you.
I mean, I'm trying to understand where they're coming from. If Medicaid is on time and those two are, whatever, 250,000, where is the $4 million coming from and how? Or is it just a month to month?
Well, you also have private pay, which would also include our 25 Medicaid applications that are still open. That accounts for about $500,000 in monies due. Plus, that's for those 25 moving forward, that is a lost cash flow of about $100,000 a month. So right now, for every month that if we have, and it fluctuates because we still get conversions from private pay to Medicaid applications or Medicare converting to a Medicaid application. But right now, we've been averaging about 25 applications. So if that remains the same, that's $100,000 in additional monies owed to us every month. So, and again, what we're being told from our associations is with the budget issues at the state level, there will not be any significant improvements in the Medicaid application process because the solution is hiring more caseworkers, which is not going to happen right now. In terms of Medicaid payments,
Scott, if I can, I'm sorry, Patsy.
Mr. Maxwell.
I'm sorry, Gary.
And then Mr. Alex.
Thank you. Scott, from time to time, we ask this question about intergovernmental transfers. How much of the accounts receivable is that, and how apt are we actually to, at some time or another, actually get those?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I believe it's over $1 million. I think it's $1.5 million roughly. We just talked with HFS probably about a month ago, and they're saying that those numbers are still good as far as they're concerned. But there's a reconciliation process that has to take place with the cost reports, and they just haven't gotten to it yet. And again, we're talking, it goes back, I believe it's 3 years now.
I think it is.
I'm starting to look greedy here. So again, it's a reconciliation of the IGT payments to our cost reports. And again, the only information that they're giving me directly is that it just has not been a high priority. They will get to it when they get to it. And again, this is pretty typical, because again, if you remember when we had this huge cash shortfall, or we hadn't been paid any IGT payments as of November of 2011 for over 2 years. And it was, again, the same rhetoric. We'll get to it when we do, and they finally did. So we're pushing as hard as we can, but we're kind of low man on the totem pole right now.
Can you help me with the use of the pronoun they? Who is it? I'm pretty guilty of that myself, but who is they?
They would be the Department of Health Care and Family Services, who runs the Medicaid program.
Mr. Alex.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Scott, to get back to Rachel's question, when you say Medicaid is being paid in a timely fashion, that doesn't mean that Medicaid's being paid for the month that the services are provided in, right? I mean, there's still a significant lag between the time we file a claim and when we get paid, right?
Actually, it's not. So with the consent decrees that were put in place, we're actually getting paid roughly within 30 days.
Okay, that's significantly better than I thought. I mean, that's significantly better than we're to get from a private insurer, right?
If you want to compare it to Molina Health Alliance, without
well,
question.
no, I mean even
yes.
even the ones who pay. I mean or pay timely. I mean, there's I guess what I'm getting at is part of the reason I mean, there are always going to be a significant amount of receivables just based on float, right? Based on the lag between the time the services are delivered and the time we get paid for the services. I mean, even if everybody were paying on receipt of bill, you're still going to have some receivables. And I'm assuming that, I would have guessed that would be on the order of 60-day minimum, but it sounds like in the case of Medicaid, it's actually, you know, does 30 days elapse between the day you...
Basically by the end of the month, they're paying within 30 days. So again, actually they've been paying within 3 weeks, because we typically get paid by the 3rd week of the month. So it's slowed down just slightly, where it's dragging on into the beginning of the next month. Now, is that a bellwether of a bigger payment delay? At this point, I'd say no. But again, when they did the payment delay in June of 2011, the state gave no heads up that they were going to invoke a payment delay. And again, I probably make a phone call to my contacts at HFS on a monthly basis, and they're telling me that they can't predict at all when a payment delay will occur.
Okay, no, that's fine. You answered my general question about what the sort of the average delay between provision of services and billing was, and it sounds like it's on the order of 3 weeks after the end of the month for Medicaid, and then obviously somewhat longer, presumably for private pay.
Private pay, our typical rule of thumb is that we will collect 80% of the private pay within 30 days, and then we have to start working to get that other remaining 20%.
Okay, so I guess the lowest your receivables would ever get would essentially be 1 month of your cost.
Well, the other that extends it is with Medicare. So with Medicare, you know, we bill Medicare, but then we have, you know, dozens and dozens of secondary payers that cover your copays and deductibles for Medicare. And so that is also a fair chunk of change, so to speak, in our receivables. And some of that the process is complicated and can be delayed for months. And so it's a process that we have to go through to make sure
Okay,
we clean up
and
on
sorry,
those.
just to reiterate, we think $1 million of that AR is the IGT money?
Roughly, it's probably, yeah, it's more than $1 million. Private pay is probably the biggest chunk because it also includes our Medicaid applications.
Okay.
So that's, I'm going to say roughly about 2 million. Again, I don't have the numbers in
Okay.
front of me.
Okay.
And roughly, you know, I believe it's about a third or more of the private pay is our Medicaid applications. Now, the good thing is our Medicaid applications has dropped from 60 down to 25. So that's helped, but it's still a significant cash flow drain by having those 25 open applications.
Okay, thank you, that's useful.
Ms. Bergson?
Would you say is not collectible for some million?
Well, we're striving to get our bad debt below 1%. But the key factor that's probably going to always keep that up is the Medicaid applications. And as long as we keep taking Medicaid and Medicaid applications, you know, it just takes, again, because of the slowdown in processing the applications. 5-10 years ago, it would take 3 months for a Medicaid application to get processed. So if an application would happen to be denied, we're only going to be out 3 months, in theory. Over the last few years, the application process probably averaged at least 365 days or a year. And we had some applications that were 2. I think the longest, I think our winner was about 3 years, where it actually got forwarded to the OIG for additional review. And again, if that application gets denied, and I think we had one that was denied, well, it wasn't denied, but they did not go all the way back to the original date of admission because the OIG found an what they call an illegal or improper asset transfer that the patient made to their family members, and the penalty is invoked, unfortunately, on the facility. So if the application process can be reduced, it reduces our exposure, but if an application takes longer to be processed, that increases our exposure. And again, we ask for all the financial information, but there's just certain times where a family member just didn't realize that dad had this insurance policy in a safe deposit box or under his mattress that is at a level enough where now they don't qualify for Medicaid, and it does happen.
From the time they apply for Medicaid until they get it, this long period, you book them as private pay receivable, and then what comes in is what Medicaid pays, which is considerably less.
Right, so once they convert or the application is approved, then we would make those corrections in our resident days, converting those from private pay to Medicaid, and also converting the revenue from private pay to Medicaid. And the difference in the revenue is approximately $40 per day.
Thank you.
Rachel, I see your hand.
So if they don't get approved, do you ever collect private pay? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what's the logic of booking them as private pay if it's either zero or Medicaid rate?
Well, from an accounting standpoint, we have to book it as private pay. We can't book it as Medicaid because they're not Medicaid. So technically, they are private pay.
But if it won't be Medicaid, it will be zero.
Correct.
So we need to think about how to write it off. You can book whatever you want, but we need to write it off immediately. Because it doesn't make sense to put that much hypothetical that you know you will never get, right? You either will get the Medicaid rate or you'll get zero.
Well, without question, when we're booking a private pay, and we know we're booking it at $40 per day higher than what we will
Then
get
you'll
if
ever
it's
get
approved.
best case scenario.
But again, from a Medicaid cost report and a Medicare cost report rules, we have to recognize it as private pay revenue.
No, I'm fine with that. I'm talking about what you report to the county boards. What you have to report to them is fine. They have their rules. But we need to know what we really thinking we can get as opposed to what, you know,
I
I get the
agree.
regulatory issues. It's different. So
And
we
again,
need to work on
it really never was an issue when the application process was 3 months, because you always, it never changed, but over the last 3 or 4 years. It's become a big issue in terms of accurate financial reporting and impact on cash flow without question.
Mr. Harkey, did you have your hand up?
This is, again, the situation, and to remind people what's going on, this is usually when people enter the nursing home under private pay, as private pay. They were going to pay private pay, but they have a spend down, they run out of assets, and they have to convert to Medicaid. And we don't kick people out during that in time, that being the point. So we're not really taking people in pending Medicaid as private pay. We're taking them as private pay, and they're paying private pay till they're out of money, and then there's the conversion time to get them into Medicaid.
Correct.
Any other questions of where we're at in his report? Okay, Mr. Gima, please continue.
All right, I think I already had spoken on this, and again, our Medicaid payments continue, and again, I have no information from the state on when a payment delay will start at this point in time. In terms of the revenue anticipation notes that was approved in January, so next week, Gary Winchell from my office is going to be reaching out to the banks, local banks with Dan. And we've had interest already from a bank based in St. Louis who understands the Medicaid situation at the state. But again, that's just initial interest. They have not even reviewed the bond documents or has been presented to their own bond counsel. But we are, hopefully, it's a start, a positive start that we will see multiple lending institutions who will be interested in these revenue anticipation notes. But it's something that we are going to be progressing as quickly as possible to gather as much interest in these. So I will keep you posted on this as we move forward. Okay, we talked about the Medicaid applications. Staffing. Again, our two key positions has been CNAs and dietary. And I can tell you with our dietary staffing, which would be food service workers and cooks, since November, our target has been just under 20 full-time equivalents, and we've had basically no openings in dietary. Now, we've had a little bit of turnover, but we continue to process applications so that if we have a food service worker who quits or a cook that quits for whatever reason, we already have applications, and we typically have been able to fill those positions within a couple of weeks. And typically what slows us down is when is our next orientation program. And again, we are now doing 2 orientation programs, typically a month, to make sure that we have our staff coming in as quickly as possible. In regards to CNAs, the open positions have dropped from 30.5 FTEs in November to 12.5 in January. We've had 12 hires of CNAs in December with only 1 separation, and in January we had 11 hires with only 2 separations. So again, obviously that is the main reason why we are seeing a significant decrease in our CNA openings. Turnover and retention rates. So now these numbers are going to be a little deceiving, and hopefully I can explain this clearly. Our turnover rates, I think we're finally starting to hopefully see a turn in the positive direction. And again, this is for all staff. We dropped from 78% in November to 74.3% in December. Obviously, we're still way over our benchmark of 45.2%. Our retention rates actually dropped between November.
Could you explain what the percentage mean?
A turnover rate, the calculation is the number of separations in the previous 12 months divided by the number of current employees. So in December, it would be the numerator, again, I don't have the number, but the denominator would be the number of employees as of December 31st. And the numerator would be the total number of separations that occurred between January 1st of 2015 and December 31st. So it's what I'm doing here in each of those months is a rolling 12-month look back. So in September, it would have been the separations as of September 30th, going back 12 months. So previously, the way I had done a turnover rate. So if January 1st is the beginning of the new year, if I had one separation in January, I would annualize that. And I always felt that that's not very accurate, because that would mean that I'm estimating 12 separations over a 12-month period. So the problem with the rolling 12-month is that obviously if we've had bad months in the first few months, it's going to take a while before we're going to see the rate go down. So again, with one or two separations with CNAs in December and January, it's still going to take time if we can consistently keep those numbers. But to get a benchmark of 45.2%, based on roughly 200 employees, I believe we would have to try to keep our separations below 5 or 6 a month. The retention rate is calculated as the number of employees at the end of December who have been at the facility for more than a year divided by the current number of employees. So again, the retention rate in December dropped compared to November, but that's because the number of employees increased by about 15 between November and December, and that was driven basically by the higher number of CNA hires.
Ms.
So does it-
Schwartz and then Mr. Quisenberry.
Just to read, so roughly 60% of the people have been there at least a year?
Correct. So
And
again,
so out of the 40% that haven't been there, it's a revolving door, so that's why we're getting the 75%?
so what this tells me is that, and it does bear out, is that the turnover is concentrated with the employees that have been there for less than a year. And they're definitely concentrated more in the employees that have been there 6 months or less. So what we've been focusing on is taking a look at our hiring process and our onboarding process to make sure that we are doing an effective job of orienting our new staff, especially our CNAs, and basically not just throwing them out on the units before they feel comfortable. That was a big issue with dietary staff that we were working with our management, our dietary management company, that they needed to make sure that they were doing a good orientation program. And I think that's showing significant improvement, and the reason why we haven't seen a lot of turnover in dietary staff. Because that, and again, that's the feedback that we were getting from the new orientees, is that they felt that they were not receiving an adequate orientation program.
I think maybe it would make sense in the future to make that clear, because otherwise it looks like 75% of your total staff turns over, and that's obviously not the case, because you're telling me 60% have been there a year or more.
Well, I think that's why.
So maybe say turnover for if you've been there less than a month, less than 6 months, less than a year. That will be a little bit, otherwise it's really scary.
Right, and I think that's the reason why I've been showing both the turnover and retention rate, because it gives you, yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
So I just want to clarify the number that you're using is the actual number of employees for the bottom number?
Right, not FTEs, but number of bodies.
Okay, so that's why the numbers bounce around in ways that don't completely make sense. Wouldn't this be done against like budgeted employees, which is a number that doesn't change month to month to month to month?
Again, I took a look at what the industry uses for a turnover and retention rate, and universally it's the number of actual employees is used as a denominator.
Okay, do those organizations have as much trouble filling all of the positions they have budgeted as we do?
Oh, I think in general, in the nursing home industry, yes, it is
Okay.
a big problem.
All right, thank you.
So on this table is the turnover and retention rates for our CNAs. And again, it's reflecting the previous slide. We're seeing a decrease in the turnover rate. Obviously, it's still very high, but again, hopefully we're starting to move in the right direction. And again, the retention rate has decreased because the denominator, or the number of CNAs that we currently employ since December, has gone up significantly with the hires that we've seen in December.
Before you move on, I have a clarification question. You said the denominator is the number of employees you have, correct?
Correct. Correct.
So that number could be, some of them could be part-time, some of them could be full-time.
Correct.
So that doesn't tell the story correctly.
Again, the calculation that I'm using is the industry standard calculation, which is based on employees and not on FTEs. And again, the benchmarks are also calculated that way. So,
But when you look at the industry standard, is there any indication in that industry standard? Is it 50% full-time, 50% part-time?
no, it's based on employees. So if you had, again, the separation is the same. So the separation or the numerator is not FTEs, it's number of employees who have separated. Right, so if you did it based on so I think theoretically, if the numerator was based on FTEs and the denominator was based on FTEs, I think you would end up with the same ratio. But I would have to test it out. But I think at the very least, you would have to be consistent in using the same type of numbers in both.
Right, okay, go on.
Contract nursing expenses, we've seen a decrease in December and January at about 75 to 78,000. Hopefully, obviously, I don't know the numbers yet for February, but I'm hopeful that we're going to see a continuing decrease with the number of hires that we have. Although, there's always issues, and right now we have some vacancies in night shift nurses. So, and we are currently working to see what we can do to attract more nurses specifically in that position, and something that we've been talking over the last couple of weeks with our new HR director.
Mr. McGuire.
Well, I guess with that number, because I was hopeful that the staffing use, the agency use would be a lot lower, because you've obviously had a 15% drop in census. And if you've got the same permanent staff serving fewer people, then you should need less agency, especially 15%. Why isn't there a correlation between the two?
Well, the other contributing factor is that in the months of December and January, we have more employees taking time off. That typically increases our agency use during that period. So I think you have that factor also weighing in at the same time. In terms of staffing, retention, and turnover, so these next two slides, I'm summarizing. So we recently hired a new human resources director who's been in place for just a little over a month. And her name's Amanda Bloomfield. And so I could tell you, based on the work that she's done in just these past few weeks, I'm highly encouraged. And I told her, I said, we have a lot of expectations that she's going to help bring in fresh new ideas of what we can do to improve our staffing, retention, and reducing our turnover. And so these are some of the highlights. So what I presented to the advisory board earlier this month, and if you want to read her report or memo, you can take a look at the board packet, and I think it's pages 68 through 70, and it gives the details on basically her initial impressions and what she's been doing over the first few weeks. But her key, after talking, and what she's been doing is she's talked with a lot of staff, with the managers, also have met with their ASME representatives, and what she's found is that her primary focus is going to be to try to fill our nursing supervisory positions. And again, we have 2 unit manager positions that are currently open. We had a dementia director, unit director position that's been open for a number of months, and we've just filled that position within the last 30 days. But the point is, or what we're going to focus on, and we always knew that this was an issue, is that we need to provide more supervisors to our staff to make sure that they have people that they can respond to And at the same time, we can make sure that our staff is taking care of our residents as best as we can. And again, with those open positions, it means that those responsibilities have to fall on our Director of Nursing and our 2 Assistant Director of Nurses. And again, when we're taking care of, 175 to 200 residents, it does become a burden. So what Amanda's going to be looking at is to expand our recruiting efforts and to reach out to our area colleges. She's also looking at changing the way that our positions or our ads are in the newspaper. And my understanding is that our new ads are going to be in this weekend's paper. And so we're going to basically making them a lot more flashy. And I can tell you in the past, our ads were very small and just ran through RN, LPNs, CNAs. So we're trying to make it more noticeable, and hopefully that'll attract more applications. Amanda's also has started reaching out to our area high schools. We traditionally have not looked to employ high school students, and we're going to make a more concerted effort to do that. Internally, we want to try to improve and create a culture of inclusivity and positivity. And so, just by nature, because it's a highly regulated environment, it's very easy to get into a negative reinforcement type of mentality. So we've always had an employee recognition program, and even our staff have recognized that we could improve on that. And so with Amanda's assistance, we are going to retool our employee recognition program and to try to do it on a more consistent, meaning on a monthly basis as opposed to on an annual basis. She's going to look to improve our vertical and lateral communication. So vertical obviously means from staff to management, but also between departments. And that means between CNAs to dietary, housekeeping, and laundry. Also taking a look to streamline our payroll processing system. It's very labor intensive at this point, and we need to take advantage of the technology to improve our payroll processing. And again, it's very complicated in nursing home because we have shift differentials, weekend differentials, which right now is being handled basically on a manual basis to make sure that we're paying our staff accurately. Nurse scheduling system. Nurse scheduling is, for anyone that has ever done that, I never want to do it, it is a nightmare to try to schedule our nurses and CNAs and trading of shifts between nurses and CNAs. So she's going to take a look at that and work with our scheduler to try to put some sense or improve that system and communication with our staff to improve that process. And again, she's also working to build the relationship with our ASME representatives. And again, I think she's already done a good job over these last few weeks in getting a start in that direction. In terms of our quality scores, again, our Pinnacle scores, which is a monthly interview with 15 random family members. And what you have here is our dining service and food quality, and you can see that over the last 6 months, we're starting to see an improvement in both our dining service and food quality scores. In the month of December, our dining service score was 3.64, and just as a frame of reference, Pinnacle's national average for dining service is 4.19. So obviously we're below that average. But in terms of food quality, we hit 3.79, which has been our best month since the middle part of last year. The food quality national average with the Pinnacle clients is 3.67. So we are definitely moving in the right direction in terms of improving our food quality. Now, in terms of overall satisfaction and what has become a bellwether for looking at nursing home quality is asking the question, would you recommend Champaign County to others? Overall satisfaction over the last 3 months is showing a positive trend. We're at 4.04 in the month of December. The national average for overall satisfaction is 4.16. So we're just under there, and hopefully we'll continue to move in the same direction. In terms of recommending the facility to others, in December, we hit 4.29, and the national average is 4.33. So again, you can see that there's been, fluctuation up and down, and we're probably averaging just under probably about 4.25. So we're pretty close to the national average of 4.3. But again, we're striving to exceed a national average on these measures as best as we can. Any questions? So again, what we're doing with these quality measures, obviously, when we get the feedback, the good thing about the Pinnacle surveys is it is not anonymous. So we get the names of the family members that we have spoken to, and if there's any issues, those issues are forwarded to the respective department managers. They are to follow up with the families and to make sure that everything has been corrected or addressed with the families. It then goes to Karen, who will also follow up with the family members to make sure that they're satisfied with any of those issues that were brought up in these surveys. But again, we're using these measures to also present these to our hospitals and to the managed care organizations because, again, they are starting to qualify who they're going to refer patients to. And so if we can show that our quality scores are high, it improves our chances of getting referrals from those entities. So any questions?
Oh, yes, Mr. Shore.
Gosh, I can't remember how many months ago now. I remember there was some discussion about changing weekend scheduling to make it a little bit more appealing for people to take on those shifts. How's that being implemented?
So it's kind of been a groundswell over the last couple of months. So we now have weekend-only shifts for both nurses and CNAs. The CNAs have also agreed to do 12-hour shifts during the week. So we have full-time CNAs who are working 12-hour shifts. We also have weekend-only CNAs who are working 12-hour shifts. And we have the same with the nurses. We have nurses who are full-time 12-hour shifts, and we have some nurses who are full-time weekend-only nurses. So it's kind of been a snowball effect, so to speak. So I know I'm not going to have these statistics correct, but bear with me just for a second. So I believe in January, we had 11 new CNAs. I believe 8 or 9 of those were weekend-only CNAs. So again, we were looking at to do this specifically for the nurses, but the CNAs have really embraced it. So again, at first they were skeptical, but now it's starting to pick up a little momentum. And again, it seems to be attracting new CNAs to the facility. So I think it's been an overall very positive impact on our recruitment.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Gima. Appreciate your presentation this evening.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on the agenda, standing committees, county facilities, we will put that report, place that report on file. And environment and land use, Mr. Esri.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have the one action item, adoption of ordinance number 976, amending the zoning ordinance for a zoning map amendment on certain property, case 805-AM-15, and I so move.
Second with Mr. Quisenberry. Yes, Mr. Esri.
Just make a few quick comments. The ZBA voted 5-0 unanimously to recommend enactment. The ELEC committee voted unanimously to pass this as well. It's just asked to stay off the consent agenda. And the petitioners, they have agreements with both Pasodum and Tolono Township on road maintenance issues, and they have pretty good, I'd say pretty overwhelming support from the neighborhood for having this done as well.
Thank you very much. Mr. Quismary, did you have a question? Oh, all right. Are there any questions? Mr. Alex?
Yeah, Mr. Esri, my understanding is this was essentially a trucking business that started as part of a farm operation and then sort of expanded to serve neighbors and serve others, right?
I believe that's basically correct,
And this
yes.
this is grain hauling, right?
They do more, I believe, than just grain hauling. They've expanded out. But beyond that, but they still
no
do.
hazmats?
Pardon?
No hazmats on the site?
That I could not answer. I know Mr. Hall is here, and we do actually have, I know the petitioners, if they would be willing, and if, I suppose we'd have to maybe suspend the rules, but or we could just ask, but,
No,
yeah.
they're welcome to come to
But
the
if they
table,
would
and
be
Mr.
willing,
Hall
or their
also.
attorney to, if you want to have that answered,
I was just curious, John, or can you?
or if Mr. Hall knows.
Can confirm what I've said, this is essentially reading the memo, this is essentially I don't want to say a technicality, but this is a case where the trucking operation was originally part of the farm operation, but then it became an issue because that was split off.
It's became an issue because it's no longer just agriculture. They've been very successful. They haul more than grain. As to hazmat, we had no evidence about that. They reviewed the things they haul other than grain, and I don't remember anything that would be termed hazmat.
Okay, and obviously neighbors have been supportive. There were no neighbors who were not supportive of this, right?
The neighbors have been very supportive. There were a few neighbors that were supportive, provided that the road issues were addressed, and I think it's fair to say they were addressed.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments? I have one, which I went on the record. I do applaud the collaboration with the road commissioners in helping with the maintenance of those roads. I always have a problem with doing zoning after the fact, which is what this is. I will support it again tonight like I did at ELUC, but I do want that on the record because we're setting precedents by doing this for future cases that come before us. Thank you. Mr. Esri.
Yeah, I believe as well, I forgot, Mr. Hall, again, to just confirm that this is truly the wishes of the board, I guess you'd say, would like to see a roll call.
All right, a roll call, a second for a roll call. Yes, Mr. All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Webble? Yes. Alex? Yes. Anderson? Yes. Bergson? Yes. Cowart? Yes. Esri?
Yes.
Harper? Yes. Harrison? Yes. Harkey? Yes. Jay? Yes. Maxwell? Yes. McGuire? Yes. Mitchell? Yes. Quisenberry?
Yes.
Rector? Yes. Rosales?
Yes.
Schwartz? Yes. Shore? Yes. Petrie?
Yes. Unanimous. And thank you, gentlemen, for staying through so many of the presentations. You've been very patient, and congratulations on this getting taken care of. All right, moving on to Highway and Transportation. Ms. Cowart.
Okay, the Highway Committee has one thing to come before the board, and I'd like to ask Jeff to come and sit at the table in case the board have any questions. We have a resolution asking for the adoption of resolution number 9523, authorizing acquisition of certain property by eminent domain, North Lincoln Avenue, from Saline Court to Olympian Drive, and I so move.
All right, a second, please. Second. Oh, thank you, Mr. J. All right, any questions or comments, either for the chair of that committee or Mr. Blue, Mr. Maxwell?
I know we're in the midst of negotiations, but is it possible to let us know what the appraised value of that particular property is?
Which property are you referring to? The ones that are mentioned in the eminent domain?
That's correct.
So parcel 102, Squire Farms parcel, the appraisal was $18,685 per acre. Parcel 103, Larry Coram parcel, appraisal is $22,049 per acre. Parcel 104, Bill Cope, appraisal is $17,947 per acre. And parcel 106, the other Squire Farms parcel, is appraised at $18,955 per acre.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson, do you still have a question? All right.
Thank you. It's not clear in this material I have before me, but how long has the county been engaged with these three property owners on this?
Do you hear?
Ask about the history of negotiations. I recommend we go in a closed session.
Jeff, is that is what you want to know? Would Jeff answering what you want to know essentially require him to go into discussion of the history of the negotiations? I think that's what you're asking.
I was just looking for a time frame, not numbers and so forth. I mean,
Has it been months or something like that? Is that what you're asking?
I think that's fair.
That can be answered.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, until we get into talking about, unless we're going to talk about deliberations or issues of confidence, I think you can answer it.
The project, the intergovernmental agreement was passed in 2011 for this project, so the landowners have been well aware of the project since then. We've had multiple open houses that landowners have been in participation at. The appraisers were qualified appraisers from the state that are certified by IDOT. They made contact with the landowners prior to entering their land to do an appraisal. The actual beginning of the negotiations on behalf of the city and the county with the landowners, we started talking to them roughly on the 5th of January was when the first letter was sent to them offering the appraised value of the property. And we've had face-to-face negotiations since then, and then some emails from the property owners and some letters back from us in the meantime.
Is that 5th of January of this year?
Yes,
sir.
Are there, yes, Mr. Quisenberry?
I think I'd like some details that I don't think I can get in open session.
Okay, is there a motion to go into closed session?
In that case, there is. Madam Chair, I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C5 to consider purchase of real property for use by Champaign County. We further move that the following individuals remain present in the closed session: the county engineer, the county administrator, and the recording secretary. And I would ask for a roll call.
All right, a second, please. Ms. Schwartz. All right, just an announcement that we'll go into closed session and then we will come back into open session to finish the agenda for those people who are still in the room. Clerk, roll call, please.
Weibel? Alex? Anderson? Bergson? Cowart?
Yes.
Esri? Harper? Harrison? Harkey? Jay?
No.
Maxwell?
Well, no.
McGuire? Mitchell?
Yes.
Quisenberry?
Yes.
Rector?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schwartz? Shore? Petrie?
Yes, we're going into closed session. Hello. Okay, back in session, back in an open session. Clerk, please call the roll to establish a quorum.
Bible? Alex? Anderson? Bergson? Cowart? Esri?
Here.
Harper? Harrison?
12.
Hartke? Jay? Maxwell? McGuire? Mitchell? Quisenberry? Rector? Rosales?
Here.
Schwartz? Shore? Petrie?
Present, a quorum is established. All right, moving back to the motion. Ms. Cowart hasn't come back into the room, but we could carry on any questions or conversation related to the motion on the table. Any more questions? Mr. Mitchell, do you have any questions? All right. All right, seeing none. All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. All right, it passes. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Blue, for staying around so long this evening. Next, we go to finance. Mr. Alex.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move adoption of resolution number 9525, authorizing the payment of claims.
Thank you, Mr. Harkey. Any questions? I see Mr. Farney's in the room if you have any questions. All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, moving on, Mr. Alex.
Thank you. I move adoption of resolution number 9526, authorizing purchases not following the purchasing policy.
A second, please. Mr. Esri. All right, questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. All right. Again, number 3, Mr. Alex.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Finance Committee recommends adoption of resolution number 9527, establishing elected official salaries, and I so move.
A second. Mr. Anderson, any more questions on this item? It was thoroughly discussed at the Committee of the Whole, but we're open for more questions.
I'd like to ask for a roll call.
All right. Second for a roll call, please. Mr. Weibel. All right. I don't see any questions. Clerk, a roll call, please.
Weibel? Yes. Alex? Yes. Anderson? Yes. Bergson? Cowart? Esri?
Yes.
Harper? Yes. Harrison? No. Hartke?
No.
Jay?
Okay. Yes. We're listening.
Maxwell? Yes. McGuire? Yes. Mitchell? Yes. Quisenberry?
Yes.
Rector? No. Rosales? Yes. Schwartz? No. Shore? Yes. Petrie?
Yes. All right. Would the clerk give a count? And you, Ms. Cowart and Ms. Bergson entered the room. You might ask them for their vote.
Bergson?
We're voting on number 3, the elected official salaries. The elected official salaries? All right.
Cowart?
Okay. 14 to 5. I have 5 noes, if the count is correct. All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Alex.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Finance Committee moves adoption of resolution number 9528, approving a contract with Gallagher Benefit Services, Inc. for employee health insurance and related benefits broker consultant services, and I so move.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Harper, a second. Any more questions on this? We've had a lot of discussion on it in the past, but there's room for more questions. All right, seeing none. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. No. All right, one no. So that is 20 to, is it 20 to 1? 18 to 1, all right. Thank you very much. Mr.
I have another item from the agenda, or
Oh, you-
excuse me, from the addendum.
Oh, okay, you want to do that now? All right, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. That's listed
No,
under new
that's
business,
fine.
isn't it?
Go ahead. It's under new business, but
Okay.
if you prefer it now.
Yeah, I'd like to take it now if we could.
All right.
I move adoption of resolution number 9539, authorizing budget amendment 15-76, increased appropriations of $525,182, offset by increased revenue of $554,850 to the mental health fund for the Scylla project, essentially recasting of budget lines from fiscal year 15. And if I receive a second, I'd ask Mr. Farney to give us a summary of this item.
Okay, Mr. Harkey, yes, second. Mr. Farney will come up. And also, if there are any other questions, just a reminder that Mr. Maxwell is your liaison to the Developmental Disabilities Board. And, no, and Mr. Shore, and Ms. Bergson sits on the Mental Health Board, so if you have any other questions, you've got a lot of experts in the space. Go ahead, Mr. Farney.
Thank you. This budget amendment comes to you by way of our outside auditors and my office. The Mental Health Board and Developmental Disabilities Board entered into agreements to purchase the Scylla homes during fiscal year 2015. When we initially started this project, talking with them, talking with their attorneys and seeing what they wanted to do, and talking with the outside auditors, we thought we had a course of action that we wanted to follow. In your budget for 2015, you included the amount of money that they needed to use to pay the mortgage for the year, and that's all we were going to put on the books was what they were paying on the mortgage. Now that we are at the end of the year and we're starting to do the work on the audit, we wanted clarification from Clifton Larson Allen. We want to make sure this is how you want it done. And they came back and said, no, we want it done this way now. And we actually agree with doing it this way. It's more transparent. What you're doing is putting onto our books, putting into our AS400 system, the cost of purchasing the homes, improving the homes, upkeep of the homes, things like that, that was done in 2015. You're also putting the revenue that came from the mortgage loans and the small amount of rent for the occupied, I believe one home is occupied at this point, maybe. But that's basically all you're doing is putting this into the financial system so that we can report on it. This will avoid us having a finding on our audit. This is being done at the recommendation of Clifton Larson Allen.
Right.
And this involves no new money, no new revenue, no new expenses.
No new money, no new expenses. In fact, the final check writing for fiscal year 2015 is tomorrow morning, so they won't have any time to spend anything.
Excellent. Do you have any questions for any of the experts here in the space? Ms. Schwartz?
So how was it reported before this amendment?
Before this amendment, all that we had was the amount of money they were spending on the mortgage. It was, I believe, in the budget for $50,000 for the year. Mm-hmm.
We're putting in what, even the purchase price, even though there is no cash outflow? Because we pretty much cash flow.
Yeah,
So
what
how
you're
is that
doing-
consistent with our policies? Because we basically only, right?
We are putting in here the purchase price of the homes, the $386,000.
As if it's a cash flow,
That's right.
which it's not. So we're putting the mortgage as an income, and the cash that
That's
comes from the mortgage that
correct.
goes out to.
That's exactly
And
what
we've
we're doing.
ever done that before?
This
Anywhere
is
else in
the only mortgage that we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you satisfied, Ms. Schwartz? Oh, thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Roll call. It was like a stereophonic sound here.
Weibel? Alex? Anderson? Bergson? Cowart? Esri?
Yes.
Harper? Harrison? Harkey? Jay? Maxwell? McGuire? Mitchell? Quisenberry?
Yes.
Rector? Rosales? Schwartz? Shore? Petrie?
Yes, unanimous. Thank you very much.
And Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
a brief communication here. I apologize. This is not, we did not get to this earlier under communications, but since Mr. Farney is here, I wanted to bring a matter to the board's attention that I learned about earlier. The auditor's office submits bills to county departments each year to essentially charge them for the services that are provided by the auditor's office, and this has been a longstanding practice. My understanding is that this year the Regional Planning Commission is disputing the bill, and as a result, the revenue from that bill may not be received in time to be accounted for in the fiscal year 2015 budget. Therefore, we may end up having to amend the fiscal year 2015 budget to so indicate. And Mr. Farney, I'm wondering if you can add anything to that.
Yeah, for many years, the county general corporate fund has been reimbursed by non-general corporate fund areas for the services of IT, of the auditor's office. And my office has used the same billing method for as long as it's been done, long before I was in the office. I think Mrs. Busey said it's been done for years and years this way. Suddenly, the Regional Planning Commission has an issue with the way we bill. We have been in discussions with them for over 2 years. Each year, they've continued to pay it. And we explained to them, this is how we do it, and we have plenty, I mean, this year alone's documentation on it. It's approximately $99,000 to the Regional Planning Commission. All other departments we bill have paid their bills. Highway Department, some of the smaller funds that have bills. So what I wanted to do was to let the board know that the Regional Planning Commission notified us this week, waiting to the very last minute, that they were not going to pay the bill. And it will show approximately $99,000 or a little over $99,000 will not show up in revenue in 2015. I don't know that an amendment to the budget will be necessary. It's just going to be your revenue is going to be about $100,000 lower. We intend to pursue other options to see what we can do. I've asked the state's attorney to give us some opinions as to what the board can do to try to make the general corporate fund whole, to what my office can do. So we're kind of in a wait and see mode, but we want to make sure that we're doing things properly to make sure that the general corporate fund is being appropriately compensated for the work that it provides to non-general corporate fund departments.
Thank you very much. Do you have any more comments, Mr. Alex, or any? Yes, Mr. Harkey.
Yeah, John, are they disputing the entire bill, part of the bill, or are they just saying that they don't need to pay this anymore?
I would say they're just saying they're disputing the entire bill because they do not understand how we come to our numbers.
Okay.
Just a clarification, it's not the commission doing this. Okay, Mr. Alex? and
No,
then
go,
Mr.
go ahead, Ms. Petrie.
Well, I finished. Go ahead.
If there were no other comments, I was just going to thank Mr. Farney for bringing this to the attention of the board. We will look forward to hearing updates. We have to reset. We have one of those numbers. This has been so many months since we last had a financial dispute with ourselves.
That's
and
right.
we last reset that when we had it with the mental health board. So now we have to reset the counter again.
One of the things that was going through my head is, man, can we sue ourselves? I hope we don't come to that, but it happens.
We're waiting for word from the state's attorney.
Yes.
Mr. McGuire.
I should add, my office's intention is we are not changing what we do. Regional Planning Commission's bills are still being paid, services are still being offered because we're waiting for that guidance from the state's attorney's office. We don't want to interrupt the flow of work for the Regional Planning Commission, which is a huge part of county government. So we don't want to do that. I want to make sure you understand that we understand that we have to continue doing what we need to do with them.
Okay, Mr. Quisenberry has a question for you.
Mr. Farney, do you feel like you could explain the reason why you bill them what you bill them to me?
Yes.
Is that something simple to do?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. In fact, if anyone wants to see copies of the bills or things like that, please shoot me an email. I'm glad to send it out to anybody who's interested. It's pretty straightforward stuff.
Okay, any other questions on this additional item that Mr. Alex and Mr. Farney brought to our attention? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for staying for such a long evening, Mr. Farney. All right, Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes. From Policy, Personnel, and Appointments, we have one item, the adoption of resolution number 9524, calling for an equitable solution to issues related to increased juror compensation, which is recommended from our committee, and I so move.
A second, please. Ms. Cowart. All right, any questions or discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. All right, one no is recorded, and it passes.
Point of order.
What?
I don't think you can record number of votes when you have a voice vote.
All right, fine, sorry. All right, a motion to adjourn? Municipal Electric, do you have a report for us, Ms. Busey? Ms. Ogden does. Oh, thank you, Ms. Ogden.
On February 24th, next Wednesday, the county will go out to bid for renewal of its electric aggregation program with 114 other communities. Our consultant, Good Energy, has notified us that the suppliers who will be bidding on this are no longer willing to bid under the same terms that they historically have. So in regards to the price match guarantee that we have historically had, what that means is that if the rate of electricity that is provided by the utility drops below the price that is provided by the alternate supplier, then the supplier will not match that price. Individually, customers can go back to the utility at any time. They can opt out, and there is not a fee or a charge to do that. However, the winning supplier itself will not match the utility's price if at any time during the term of the contract it drops below the price of the aggregation program. Opt-out letters will go out to all of the customers of the utility and also the current aggregation program. In the spring, they have to go out at least 21 days before the start of the new contract, which will be June. And the letters will also include the current price to compare that is offered by the utility. That price will also change in June. However, we will not have knowledge of that. It's not likely that we will have knowledge of that when the opt-out letters go out to customers. One other change that will take effect with this round is that the customers who are currently with third-party suppliers will receive informational letters notifying them of the county's aggregation program, including the new term and the new rate. And they will have an opportunity to opt into the program if they so choose.
Mr. Alex, I see questions already.
So you can opt out at any time, or you can only opt out at the beginning?
You can opt out at the beginning, and you can also opt out at any time.
And if you opt out, can you not opt back in? Or is there a specific period of time for which you cannot opt back in?
It is my understanding that you have to remain with the utility for 12 months before you can opt back in.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, Ms. Bergson?
Would one know if one didn't opt out? How would one know what the utility price was so you knew which was higher? You see, suppose I stay with the aggregator and the Ameren price goes lower. How would I know that? Do I have any way of knowing which is cheaper?
You, at any time, can look that information up on the price to compare, the website that offers the price to compare. The county, we haven't really discussed how we would handle that. It's a potential that if the county board wish, we could release a press release notifying customers that the price had dropped below the aggregation price, and that would give consumers the option to go back or have the information if they so choose to go back to the utility. But it's basically going to be up to consumers to, make that decision individually.
I think if the county has promoted this aggregation thing, perhaps we should inform the customers if the price does go over the Ameren price.
Mr. Alex?
I guess I would say, I agree with that in principle, although it's a little more complicated than that because it's a spot price, right? So we would want to be careful in that situation to warn people that, yes, the Ameren price may have dropped below, but it may not remain below. So it's essentially, given this 12-month lockout period, requires the customer to engage in some futures trading there as to whether or not they think they're going to benefit by being out of the pool for 12 months or whether it's a temporary condition. So I wouldn't want to be putting the county in the position of essentially seeming to give financial advice.
Have we considered the other aggregators? There seem to be others out there.
Well, the group that we belong to is 114 member group. I believe it's the largest group that there is. And the consultant, Good Energy, has notified us that there will be 3 alternate suppliers that will be bidding for this. And their recommendation is that they are going to be recommending that we enter into a long-term agreement to, I guess, hedge against the validity and also secure savings over the long term.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yeah, essentially, when this became an option, the energy pricing was heading upwards only. People weren't looking at what would happen with a energy crash. And so the aggregators lost their shirts for a while and said, we can't do this anymore. So that's why they said, we're not going to take that option anymore or make that as part of the deal. So what long-term aggregation pricing gives you is stability. It gives you opportunity to know what you're going to pay. It starts out cheaper, but as in any case with a consumer market, it's up to consumers to pay attention to what's going on around them and adjust accordingly. We are providing an opportunity. They don't have to opt in if they like playing the energy market. They can stay out playing the energy market. It's an opportunity to know what you're going to be paying for energy costs in the long term. Sometimes you win on that, sometimes you lose, but that's what you're paying for, stability rather than for being able to time the volatility.
Mr. Alex?
How long is long? If they want us to enter into a long-term contract, how long would that be?
Well, we haven't seen any of the bids yet, but my understanding is that from the analysis that they have done, that they are leaning towards a 3-year contract.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure it wasn't, 20.
Ms. Bergson?
Are Champaign and Urbana both with this aggregator?
I attended a pre-bid meeting last week. I don't believe that, I was going to say, I don't believe that Champaign was there.
Have we considered their aggregator? Have we looked at that one?
Historically, they have not done as well as we have done with the aggregator that we've been with. So,
But
no, we didn't. You authorized us moving ahead with this aggregator, I believe, in December.
Any other questions or comments? All right, Ms. Ogden, thank you very much. Appreciate you. All right, a motion to adjourn, please. Mr. McGuire. A second from Ms. Harrison. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good weekend.